Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today, we're going to make a Cozy Quilt Designs pattern. I've had a lot of requests for this pattern. It's called Lotus Blossom. I make a lot of the patterns from Cozy Quilt Designs. They're easy to follow. They have multiple sizes, and I haven't had any one of them turn out poorly. I really like them. So this is Lotus Blossom. This is a strip club pattern, so that means it uses the 2.5-inch strips or a jelly roll. I want to use a nice bright one, so I'm going to use a K facet group. This one here called Island, that's nice and bright. That will work very nicely. We also need an accent fabric. Where the purple is showing here, we need to pick something that will go with our roll, and I think purple is what I'm going to pick for this one. A lot of these deep purple shades will look good. I think this one will be the best. The only other fabric we need is the background, and I'm going to use white just like they showed in the pattern. Nice bright white. Perfect. We've got everything we need, so let's go down to the studio and get started. Let's check the pattern. Let's see how much yardage we need. I think I'm going to make the big twin size. So it'll make a 74 by 94. That's a really generous sized twin, but it'll use all 40 of the strips. And then the focus, which is the purple, we need 1 2/3 yards. Background 1 7/8 yards. It's always a good idea to get your fabric ironed up nice and flat before you cut it so you can get accurate cuts. So I'm going to press this flat and then I'm going to follow the pattern to cut the strips that I need. I like to cut 4 or 8 layers of fabric at a time. You can cut whatever is comfortable for you. So I'm going to put a weight on here and line up my ruler with my mat and make my first cut. Then I'm going to follow the pattern to get all the sizes I need. Now this is not my pattern, so I can't give you the sizes, but they do have them very clearly written in there, and it's very easy to follow. I have all of the background strips, the accent strips cut. The first thing we're going to sew with, though, is going to be the jelly roll strips. These K facet strips are so nice and colorful, and we are going to take them 2 by 2 and we're going to stitch them together. So it doesn't really matter which 2 you grab, just grab 2 different ones and stitch them on their long edges. These do not have to be ironed before we stitch them, because as soon as we're done sewing this long seam, we're going to press it to one side and they will get ironed really nicely then. So just stitch with your presser foot at the inside of the pinked edge there. So that's where these are measured from the inside edge. So you can build up some speed here. And once you get to the end, I like to pull it back and then open it up and finger press it. So what I'm going to do is keep the seam allowance to the side. I'm going to use my fingernail or even the pad of my finger, open it up with the palms of your hand here and draw your finger down there. This will make it really easy to iron. So that set is done. I'm going to do the same thing with all the rest of the strips. Just be sure to grab 2 different colors. It doesn't really matter which 2 you put together, because they're all going to get mixed up in the quilt, but just don't grab 2 of the same one to sew together. So do this same procedure with the whole stack. All of these strips are in pairs now, and we just need to iron them up. So here is how I iron them. First, smooth it out with your hand a little bit and just use a dry iron. Then get a straight edge. I use a 4-foot metal ruler that I got at Home Depot, and I'm going to make sure that the edge of the strip is up against that ruler. Then I'm going to use some steam. Now that they're all ironed nice and flat, we're going to take all of these right back over to the sewing machine. We're going to be using our background strips and our accent strips. So take one of them and one of these pairs here. And I think we'll put the accent strip on the bottom. We'll put them right sides together. And we are going to stitch down each side, 1/4 inch in from each side. I'm just finishing up the second stitching here, and I did find that it's a little bit easier for me to put my accent on the top because I've got those pinked edges and I can see a little bit easier to get my exact 1/4 inch with this on the top. I have all of the focus fabric and the background strips stitched to the strip sets. So now it's time to cut these. So let's take one of these guys, and I'm going to be using the strip tube ruler. This is a Cozy Quilt Designs product and it works really well with all of the strip units. The pattern will give you directions for how to cut if you don't have this ruler, but I find it pretty handy. So I'm going to use the measurement that it says in the pattern, and I'm going to cut a square out of here. So I'm going to get that by cutting up this side and down this side. And because this is a tube, we are going to get a square. So I'm going to continue moving the ruler up, down, and cut. I'm going to get 8 squares out of this one tube. Now, you may have to make a fresh cut. You might not be able to put that all the way up against your last cut. You might have to make a fresh cut. And just be sure to check the pattern so you see which line goes on the cut part and which line goes on the stitching. I'm actually putting the line on the stitching, and that'll make your blocks nice and accurate. All of the blocks are cut now. Here's the background blocks and the accent blocks. They're exactly the same size. The easiest way to iron these is to put the solid down and then peel this open so that the background or the accent is up against the stripe here. I know this one is darker, but it still should be facing this way, those seam allowances. These dog ears here do need to be trimmed, and let me show you a quick way to trim these. I like to slide them over the edge of the wastebasket or the edge of the table and use my scissors and take the bottom one, trim it by hand. Then you can peel the next one down and trim. So just take one layer at a time and trim. This is really a fast way to do it. We have all of the parts we need to build the quilt. So we are going to need 6 of these blocks that have the purple. So just pick 6 of them that are different. So I'm going to try to not repeat. Then we need 4 of these blocks that have the white. And again, those 2 are pretty close. I'll put that aside and pick something else. And then we need 2 of the backgrounds. So let's move all these guys aside. And we're going to turn these blocks like that. 2 plain in the middle. 3 more over here. And then we've got a couple of these guys. And you can turn the blocks around if you can switch them up if you don't like the colors, but it really doesn't matter that much. You just want to get them in this order and don't worry too much about, there we go. Don't worry too much about what is up next to what. So that's what the block looks like. The only switch I might make is right here. I've got 2 dots in a row there. So if we just simply take this one here and this one here, now we've got the block all correct. Here is how I like to sew this block together. I'm going to be putting these all right sides together, and I'm going to sew down here. So I'm just going to move that over a little bit, pick up this top pair, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and leave it on the machine. Now grab the next pair, don't spin it or anything, just put it right over here and stitch together. Now these stitch very easily because most of the edges are bias. So this here is a bias edge and it will stretch. So you want to be a little careful that you don't stretch it, but it does make it easy to match up all the edges. Take that last pair. There are no seams to match, no intersections to match in the middle. You just have to make the corners meet. Slide that over a little more. Take all of these and open them up. And we are simply going to add the last row on the right here. So this piece is going to go over here. So I'm going to leave those guys there, stitch this one on, and just keep adding as I go down here. Now all of the pieces are connected, and I'm very unlikely to get anything in the wrong order because they're all attached by their little threads. So it's a good idea at this point to make sure you have everything facing the right way before you sew the rows together. So seam allowances, we're going to press the top row to the right, and I'm just going to finger press it a little bit. Since these are bias edges, you don't want to stretch it as you press it, just squish it a little. The next row, opposite direction. So these seams will go to the left, and then on the third row, make them go to the right. So we're just alternating the whole way. Now we're going to turn it and sew the rows together. Again, it's really easy to get everything to match up because the bias edges have a little bit of give to them. So be careful you don't stretch them too much, but make your intersections match here. It's really easy. Now we are going to finger press all the seams down. Now let's take it to the ironing board and get it nice and flat. I like to press these from the back first. Even though we finger pressed, it's not perfectly flat, so I'm just going to go through with a dry iron and just press it down a little and try to avoid pulling too much because the fabrics will stretch. So just try to squish those seam allowances the direction you wanted them to go. Once you've got that done, now we can flip it over, smooth it out with your hands because you can tell if those seam allowances are laying the way you wanted them to. Make sure it's pretty square. Now you can steam it. And here's another tip. You can move your iron with the grain here and you won't be distorting or stretching. So the grain in this case is mostly on the diagonal. So try to move your iron that way and then your block will stay nice and rectangular. There's only one other block to make, so let me show you that block. Still need 6 of these guys, and we need 4 of these guys, and 2 of these guys. So let's see if we can get these laid out correctly here. That's the second block. Now this block is actually the mirror image of this block. So that's all we have to make. A number of these and a number of these, then we can get the whole quilt put together. I have all the blocks done. They really stitched up really very quickly. And they're easy to iron, they're very easy to get flat. So there's just these 2 blocks. So all we do is just alternate them. And this will be the whole quilt. The blocks go together so fast, and when you lay them out, there's no way you can do it wrong because there's only those 2 blocks. You can't get them sideways, you can't get them upside down. And it's because there's all those fabrics from the jelly roll. I haven't even traded any blocks around, and the fabrics are all sprinkled throughout all the different prints. So now would be a good time, I think, to go and pick out some borders. So let's grab a block and we'll go down to the store and pick out something fun. Because the patchwork is all out of K facet prints, I'm going to try to find one of those that will match for the borders. The nice thing about K facets prints is you can mix and match them very easily. We could do a purpley blue border. Red, maybe not as easily, but the purples down here would be really good. trying to get something with a little more green, and we have these stripes. Okay, this has a lot of the colors that are in the quilt, and it's a stripe. I think that one will look really nice. I've got the borders on, the whole quilt is done, it's loaded up and ready to quilt, so now we need to pick some thread out. I have a lot of nice green colors here. I'm for sure going to use a green, and I think I would like the thread to show in the purple area and show less in the white area. So that one's a little bit dark. This one will show a little on the purple, not much in the light. That one will be really nice. Let's use that one. I'm going to use a pattern called Cypress for the quilting. It has nice gentle curves and an overall design, and I think that will look really good on this Lotus Blossom quilt. Take a look at how bold the patchwork is. I can't believe how quick the quilt stitched up and how great it looks. I'm so glad I made this pattern. Those patchwork blocks just sing, they just come right out at you. Now, the block we made, it's right here. It's not real big. It's 4 up, 3 over, and it's just turning that different ways to get the big overall pattern. And let me show you something when you stitch. These do not match up. They're not supposed to match up. So when you're stitching and you're wondering, why doesn't it make a solid line? It doesn't. You don't have to match anything within the block. That's one of the reasons that makes it so quick to stitch. Now the quilting turned out exactly how I wanted. You can't see it much at all in the dark, but in these light areas, it just makes a great texture. Really, really fun. The quilting doesn't show from the back at all because I used that stripe on the back. You really can't see it. I used a solid grunge here on the binding. That looks really good. Just an absolute joy to make. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the Lotus Blossom quilt. Now, if you don't want to miss any of our videos, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please keep sending me photos of your projects. I love to see the quilts that you're making. It inspires me to try new color combinations and new patterns. Happy quilting!